frightening to see what's happening. It's disturbing to see what's happening with deplatforming and so forth. But
what's the solution?
That's right. What's the solution?
Yeah, and it's funny, you hear like when so Trump got kicked off of Twitter and everything else, and conservatives were generally up in arms about that because they're like, that's terrifying, which I agree, it's scary. But then there's this Antifa group got kicked off of Twitter, and they were like, yeah, they should have been kicked off a long time ago. Not to compare Trump to Antifa necessarily, but those are the same people saying, well, private companies should be able to do whatever they want, which I agree with.
Well, they're not even necessarily the same people. That's the other thing that's so strange about social media, is that you can get groups of people who are hypothetically allied by their political beliefs saying opposite things at the same time. But even if you're united with other people by your political belief, all the people within that union are still extraordinarily diverse and are going to have all sorts of diverse opinions.
So is it ever acceptable to cancel somebody? Is there a line? Or you said American law.
Well, it's always the case that these things have to be thought through in their specific instantiations. And I'm often parodied for my answers to questions like this, but it depends on what do you exactly mean by cancel. Like, it's clearly the case that there have been instances where people have been fired or blocked off social media without sufficient provocation. So, but it's the same question again. At what point does misbehavior mount to the degree that intervention has to occur? And we don't know how to answer that. We don't know how to regulate these new technologies. They're too complicated and sophisticated. They're beyond us in some ways. I mean, Twitter, for example, seems to promote irritable responses and impulsive responses, and that's probably in part because of its strict character limit. You have to react with short bursts of thought.
So there's no nuance.
Well, the room for nuance is limited, and your anger systems can produce short verbal outbursts, and so it's an unexpected consequence of that strange limitation in communication, perhaps, that Twitter tends to be an impulsive forum. We just don't understand enough about human psychology to predict that sort of thing, much less police it. We have no idea what effects on personality, like what's the effect on personality of being forced to communicate in bursts of less than 280 characters. No one knows the answer to that. Maybe that brings your disagreeable aspect out to the forefront in a way that a longer post just wouldn't.
That seems
maybe
logical.
Compassion takes 500 words or 500 characters, and anger takes 180. No one knows.
That seems logical.
Well, anger is an impulsive response, an impulsive immediate response, and so it's likely adapted to shorter time frames.